What is going on, Governor? Chisgule here, and today we're going to look at a huge open field brawl that took place on my kingdom. That's right, during the last Mighty Governor, Toon and WoW, two alliances, agreed to some crazy open field combat, and this was awesome to record and to watch. Thanks to them for letting us do that. If you like Rise of Civilizations content, Crazy Wars, then you should totally like and subscribe because we are a sponsored creator with Rise of Civilizations. So, with that said, holy moly, this was awesome to watch and super cool to evaluate. What you are looking at here is um, essentially a way to gain points during the Mighty Governor without causing permanent damage to either alliance, and I love the way that these two alliances approach that. And there's a few really important concepts we need to talk about while this footage is rolling. And the first concept that I think we need to talk about is something called being out of position. Being out of position, or worded a little differently, getting caught out or caught out of position. This is a concept that I actually learned when I was playing a lot of Heroes of the Storm, where essentially if you position your hero, if you position your army relative to everyone else in a way that makes you vulnerable, you are as good as dead. You're as good as dead. And what you're going to see happen in this video is occasionally folks are going to get caught out. They're going to be out of position. And I may even pause and do a freeze frame. I really need like one of those like fancy, abilities to like have a pen and real time be pausing and drawing on the video like they do for football play evaluations. I don't know. I want to get this video out and I'll figure out how to do something more fancy in the future. In fact, if you know how to do that, send me a message and we can definitely connect. I'd love to hear how to do it. Anyways, so getting caught out of position. You'll see armies expand beyond their front line, go way deep into enemy lines, and all the enemy has to do is turn on that army. Everyone turns on them, and they're just dead. And they can't do anything about it. They're just gone. They can't run. There's nowhere to go. There's no cover. There's no flag to jump into. This battle was fought on neutral territory. So getting caught out of position is something that you profoundly want to avoid. And look, it's easy to happen by accident if you're not very closely watching your armies because you've got multiple armies on the field. You need to be looking multiple places. This is why in open field combat, I really don't like to field more than 2 armies at a time because it's just too hard to keep track of that, manage your city, and manage the war. So with that said, in addition to getting caught out of position, I also want to call attention to the use of certain commanders here. Because you're going to notice there is a ton of CPO on the battlefield, and CPO is exceptional for open field combat. Now, why is that? It is because of CPO's second skill. Whenever he's attacked, there's a chance that he will do more damage as a result of having been attacked. And so if there's a lot of people doing a lot of damage, potentially a lot of AoE happening, you're going to get hit, and it's going to cause you to do more damage. And so attacking a CPO is actually one of the lowest priority targets you probably should have. In fact, your goal, and this gets into kind of the next topic, is to target the right thing. So you should be targeting units that are relatively weak, do not have a lot of ways to support themselves or to strengthen their defensive posture. Let me give some examples. Boudica, Minamoto, Cao Cao, these are the sorts of commanders that you want to be hunting down and destroying because they don't have a lot of defensive capability. They are primarily offensive armies. And so if you can pressure them and stop them from doing the thing that they want to be doing, you can be very, very effective. Now, I get that this is not actually representative of what war is really like when you're fighting for strategic objectives. In fact, it's very different. But this could be representative of some of at least what we'll see in Alliance Battlegrounds, so it's important as a concept to talk about. And this is not a new gaming concept. Focusing your damage on the enemy unit that tries to do damage. And this is beneficial for a number of reasons. It makes it so that they can't damage your most vulnerable units, so it lowers their ability to do damage. And it also is the area where you can do the most damage anyways. Now, there's one other really interesting pairing of commanders that I want to talk about, and you'll see in this video that I believe Imperator is running around with support commanders. And there aren't a lot of support commanders on the battlefield, but oh my goodness, is a support commander powerful in this exact context. In this case, I believe that Imperator is using a Joan of Arc paired with Cleopatra. Now, if you were doing a one-on-one battle, those are not the commanders I would bring. If you're doing a two-on-two battle, those are still probably not the commanders that I would be bringing. But in this huge battle, where it's like 10 plus versus 10 plus, that is incredibly powerful to have all of those buffs coming from Joan of Arc. She influences your infantry, your archers, and your cavalry, and restores rage for everyone that's nearby. I don't think there's even a limit to the number of armies that can benefit from that, but let me just check. Yeah, it's for the next 2 or 4, if you have the expertise skill, seconds. They all get this benefit, and it's all armies that are nearby. In addition, the talents of Joan of Arc can be very, very powerful in influencing nearby enemies. In particular, if you look at the very top talent in the support tree, it's Cage of Thorns, causing her to slow nearby enemies. This is a very big deal for getting control of the battlefield. I love that they fielded at least one combination of Joan of Arc with Cleopatra. Now, you may be wondering, like, why Cleopatra? She, on her first skill, has a heal. Heal some of the slightly wounded units in your army and nearby friendly armies, and increase the defense of those troops by some percentage for the next 2 seconds. So it is really awesome to have those buffs rolling for your entire army, and not just your army, but all nearby armies. And, like, look, the healing factor is a max of 400 on Cleopatra, but when you think about the number of targets that are hit, let's say it's 10 armies, that's kind of like, if you sum it all up, a healing factor of 4,000, which is actually pretty darn good, especially when you factor in the defense as well. So having one army operating in the support capacity is really strong. And, I don't know if they had rules for this particular set of duels around whether or not they were using army expansions. But an army expansion is a life-changing buff that, look, if you're going to be waging war for even a small amount of time during the 4-hour window that the buff lasts, you are getting value from that buff because it is saving you resources on severely injured or wounded units because you have a bigger army and you're going to have less injured units. So overall, I think this is really fun to watch, really exciting. And, I honestly hope that in the future, we can move more of the battling that's happening in Kingdom versus Kingdom, or not Kingdom versus Kingdom, in Mighty Governor, to be like this. If instead of destroying each other's cities and attacking weak players that are vulnerable, we can create a situation where maybe we do some open field duels. Maybe we even schedule them, have a tournament. There could be prizes for the winners. That's something we could arrange. I don't know. If you would be interested in that, let me know in the comments. And if you're on our kingdom and you're interested in that, definitely say something in the comments. I think this might be something that we ultimately end up proposing. And in my perfect world, we might even mix things up so that it's not like one guild versus another, but we maybe find a way to like draft players and have balanced teams. I mean, I don't know, you could do like the equivalent of fantasy baseball, right? That could be a lot of fun to do a tournament in that way. Now, one thing that you are probably seeing now on the screen that is worth really talking about is the idea of a strategic retreat and how can you retreat effectively in Rise of Civilizations. And I say that because when you are retreating, and if you are retreating without, by just like telling your army to return home, you are not going to use your active skill. At least I'm pretty sure you don't. You're going to be focused on walking instead of using your active skill. And the enemy, if they're chasing you and they're as fast as you are going to be having their active skill go off and hit you kind of regularly. So if you can retreat by attacking another enemy that is going the way that you are going, then you can get a lot of value from your active skills while heading in the direction you're trying to head in. And that, I think, is very, very powerful. At the same time, There are some armies that have some advantages to a strategic retreat, and I just want to call attention to, for instance, there is a cavalry talent that increases your march speed by 30% when your army is less than a certain amount of strength. This is a very powerful way to make a strategic retreat, and you're honestly like almost uncatchable. Unless the enemy is rocking that slow from Crown of Thorns from Joan of Arc, you could have a nice, easy time walking away after you've dipped below 50% health. So, one more concept that's really worth talking about here is having a front line and having a set of tank units that are the first armies to move in. And the reason we want to talk about this is that these armies essentially are creating space for the rest of your armies to do what they need to do. Tank armies include units that are specialized in defensive capabilities. Commanders that are really good at that, for instance, include Scipio and Caesar. Also, actually, Hannibal Barca. Commanders that either are increasing your tankiness or are making it so that you can just have more freaking units than anybody else do really well here. And I think healing can be a big part of that as well. So you could potentially have a Joan of Arc as a secondary in that capacity, although that wouldn't be my first choice. But for instance, Richard the First adds a lot of tankiness. Infantry in general can be very tanky, especially if you're rocking the Richard the First and Charles Martel combination. A lot of tankiness that's afforded by that group. And you essentially can sort of push on enemies. You can inflict them with debuffs with, compared to other armies, relative immunity. Relative immunity. And if you can get one of your players that has the highest tier of troops, the very best tech, the very best skills on those commanders to be leading that style of charge, then they can really hold that line very well, and you can wait for enemies to move into positions that are very vulnerable, either behind your lines of your strong troops, in which case you can turn on them, or they end up off to the side and kind of isolated, and maybe you can hunt them down that way. Having a tank unit can really contribute to that. And so to sort of summarize, we talked about 3 different types of units you could bring to this style of brawl. You could bring a tank unit, which I think is really important for your strongest players to be doing. You could bring a DPS unit, in which case you want to focus on the enemy's weakest armies. Or you can bring a support unit, and you only need a couple of these for like your entire alliance to be on the field in an area at a certain point in time. But having 1 or 2 of those support armies rolling can be really, really life-changing, in my opinion anyways. So my friends, I've got a good bit more footage. I'm going to let this footage roll rather than talk. But if there's something I missed here about this open field combat, if there's something else that we should be talking about related to this, let me know in the comments. Eager to see your thoughts. And otherwise, until next time, my friends, you have fun smashing the kingdom.